Hello and welcome to me interrogating my friend. So, in this episode, my name is Veritas and my friend's name is...
Cat Attack?
Sure. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to talk about the recent ViDoc, the Forged in Fire nonsense, the Bungie announcement from the 16th of August, and the introduction of something that I've kind of been on the fence about if they should add to the game or not, and everyone's just like, oh my god, yes! So, let's talk about what happened today in terms of the Bungie announcement. Kat, have you seen anything about the Bungie announcement without giving away what happened?
Yes.
Okay, so the Bungie announcement happened today, all that fun shit. So, what did they talk about? Well, they showed off some more raid things, they explained what the Wretched Eye Strike was, they showed off some new weapons, some new armors, the ornamental modifiers for weapons and armor like that, like the gold and black Hawkmoon, and, you know, things along that lines, but what ooh, good, it's fucking taken, this will be really easy, but what I'm really focused on here is the introduction of private matches. Oh my god, private matches. So, Bungie finally decided to add private matches into the world of Destiny. That's custom matches, private matches, solo things, whatever you want. That will allow for the introduction of pretty much playing with your friends on your own rules, not dealing with Crucible scrub nonsense, and also the introduction of tournaments. So, Kat, what is your opinion on the introduction of private matches in terms of the landscape changing through streams and competitive arenas, as opposed to what we've seen previously on things like Twitch and YouTube, now with the introduction of competitive and private things?
The scene's gonna change completely. Destiny's already had a very MLG kind of feel to it, where players have always been very snotty and like
try hard.
If you're not this level, you can't do this. If you don't have this gun, you can't do this. It's always been a repeating thing in Destiny where you couldn't do activities because you hadn't met the requirements that the community had come to terms on. So if them adding private games and possibly taking it to MLG, which I can see everyone...
I'm going to interject already. Game Battles, which I believe is a tournament system, and MLG.com have already set up tournaments for the first week of post Rise of Iron DLC. I believe Game Battles is offering a $1,000 prize, and MLG has already mentioned getting into it on Twitter. So these things are going to happen very quickly and very soon after the introduction of private matches.
Yeah, I figured without even having to look. As soon as I saw private matches, I knew it was going right to the competitive scene.
Do you have any concerns specifically between the relation of PvP tournaments and PvE content as we've seen so far?
Yeah, and it worries me, because a lot of the times when nerfs and rebalances come to the game, it always screws over PvE content. So I'm kind of scared to see that with this, where everyone's going to be playing around, everyone's going to start getting to MLG, and they're going to start saying, okay, well, this gun isn't very fair, or hand cannons aren't fun, like they have been said before, but I have a feeling they're going to start saying, oh, well, we don't like these guns in MLG, and Bungie is going to start tweaking them to fit to the competitive scene. It's really going to screw us over again, is what I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mentioned this before in the hand cannons and small arms are awesome video. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you want to see that, wherein I essentially said that the only way for hand cannons to feel fun is if you have a small arms modifier, things like that. You know, with the continuing tweaking and nerfing and patching of some of the community's more fun weapons, throughout the years, can be really traced back to people complaining about it in the Crucible, i.e. Last Word and Thorn in Year 1, also the Suros regime in Year 1, things like that eventually brought about the nerfing of those types of weapons, mainly from the standpoint of the Crucible, and leaving them essentially useless weapons outside of the Crucible, because of Bungie's need for consistency and not wanting to make a gun feel different between Patrol and Rift.
Yeah, and that's the one problem, and I really hope Bungie kind of learns from this. Now that they have added custom games, I hope they're really going to take the thought into it and actually tweak their guns how they should to try to balance them properly between the two.
Yeah.
Because no Fallen or Cabal has ever complained about guns being overpowered. And the only gun in PvE that was ever, you know, considered overpowered was the Yellowhorn. And that was because people were making it, like this whole MLG scene, they were making it so if you didn't have Yellowhorn, you couldn't play.
Right. It was overpowered in the sense that it was socially overpowered. It became a ticket into activities that players required you to have, because it was a decent weapon and it could be used, but there were better weapons to use than Yellowhorn. But it fell into this place where it was held with such high regard that it became like backwards the most powerful gun in the game because of how coveted it became through the community, requiring it for endgame activities, and that bled into other facets of the game and eventually became a gun that had to be taken out because of that.
Yeah, which was a shame if you ask me, because that gun, it did make the activities easier, and when it comes down to it, it was just a gun, and I'm sad that they had to completely respec it to fit our community's, like, guidelines.
Yeah.
They had to make it, that's why I'm a little worried with its return in Rise of Iron, because I don't know how viable they're going to make it again, and I don't want to see this stuff happen again for us to get like, oh, this gun's awesome, we start using it again, and then nerf. Just a lot of stuff Bungie does that kind of concerns me, and them bringing back a gun that was already taken out, essentially, it just, I don't know. There's a lot of things Bungie plans on doing that are concerning.
So let's refocus this a little bit more on what everyone's talking about, being private matches specifically. In their post, they mentioned that, I think they actually said that rewards and bounties will count while playing in private matches. That has been, from what I've most recently seen, that has been all of but confirmed, that your bounties and your experience and things like that will be counted inside of private matches. So in other games, private matches usually, rule of thumb, tend to disable any kind of rewards from them. Yeah. But when we're seeing private matches here, apparently rewards are staying in. The other thing about that, though, is, from what I saw, is they said no matter what game you're playing, no matter what you're actually playing, you're actually always playing Control, which gives me the idea that, say you go into private matches and you have a bounty for, winning a Control game, a skirmish game, and an elimination game. If you set your game mode to skirmish and you play that, your bounty progress is going to say you did a Control game. Is what I'm assuming is going to happen there. Like, it's always going to track it as if you're playing Control, but like a custom version of Control. So I guess even if they do count, it's not really going to count for everything. So you can't go through and do all of your bounties in it. You can really only do Control-based bounties in terms of game modes. Or like, getting 7 wins, you could get 7 wins playing, 3 Control and 4 Rift. But it's always going to really count in the game engine as Control, regardless of what mode you're actually playing, is what I've seen or heard so far. Which may not be as bad if it's just one game mode, because if not, it would completely invalidate the true meaning of War Bounty, which usually requires you to get 3 wins in 3 different game modes, and if you could just do that in private, you could just set those up and boom, free Nightfall rewards, if that bounty system is still staying through to Rise of Iron. So that was my concern with it, but it seems it's only a half concern now. Yeah,
it still kind of baffles me that they're going to keep that kind of stuff in the account. That kind of surprises me.
Yeah. Okay, so what are your thoughts on basically them monetizing Crucible? Like through tournaments, like what is that going to bring to the Destiny community? You think it's going to better it or going to make it worse?
I honestly, PvP has always made Destiny worse, in my opinion.
I agree with you.
And that can be counter-argued all you want, and I'll admit, yeah, it can be counter-argued. But for me and my experience in Destiny, it's always been ruined by PvP.
Yep.
So with them monetizing and capitalizing on it, they're going to start. They've already done it, but they're really going to start just being like, okay, well, everyone likes PvP the best now. Let's stop focusing on our PvE content again.
Yeah.
Because we've always had a lack of content compared to PvP.
Yeah. So one of my thoughts is that it's not all going to be competitive tournaments. The first few whispers of cool private matches brought in the ability to do like fun, like arcade style things inside the Crucible, namely like hide and go seek or tag or fun things like that you could do in other games. There's a few Twitch streamers and things like that do hide and go seek or tag or things like that. Now that HUDless is a thing, they'll jump into like a Venus, a vault of glass and have 5 people hide, 1 person seek. And now with private matches, you could probably disable HUDs and run around in control and hide around the map and do things like that. Now that kind of stuff is going to happen, and the same thing with custom games in Halo. Not every game is going to be like this sweaty tournament. Just because private matches are now a thing doesn't mean that that's all you're going to see are tournaments. Custom matches were in Halo for the longest time, and it's not just tournaments. It's tournaments like once a year, and then a couple other bets between friends and things like that. So just because private matches are being introduced doesn't mean that it's just going to be a try-hardy money tournament landscape. It's going to be, a couple friends jumping in and, trying to practice headshots and things like that, or, a 1v1 me on shipment bro type situation. Those things are going to be probably more prevalent than the tournaments are, but the tournaments will be a lot more, publicized and things like that. So, I don't know. It's a double-sided sword in terms, if even that, because private matches do offer something else to do with friends and more fun to have. It's your custom Crucible, which it's kind of nice to have that now, which is almost like a PvE version of content, because it's not online competitive. It is private games and going around and messing around in a map or whatever. But tournaments are a thing; those will happen. I almost treat tournaments as like a bad side effect of adding that stuff in, even though that's like pretty much the purpose of adding private matches is to have tournaments. But yeah, I just hope that they're smart about it and it doesn't take over the next few patches or whatever. It doesn't consume all of their workload. It doesn't become the sole and main focus of the studio, just because that might be the louder portion of the game, or the pretty much the more the more impatient portion of the game. Hopefully we see them continue to equally distribute their development load on the entirety of the game and not just one facet of it, because that might be the most popular. But from a business standpoint, we'll see how that works. But from a player standpoint, it should be fun. Private matches are always fun, but we'll have to see how it affects the landscape and how it affects the development team and the cycles and how it affects the attitude of the community, because tournaments can go a couple different ways. They can help grow communities, they can help better connections. I mean, they can help growing people on Twitch and YouTube. If they host it or participate, it can give them recognition, and it can help bolster people's careers and their personal lives and things like that. It can help bring that higher and show people off and be like, hey, he's really good, but he's like, you never heard of him before, but now you do because he's in a big tournament, kind of things like that. So it is helpful for the community, but it could easily slide down the cliff and cause a horrible thing to happen. But just because something bad could happen doesn't mean we should never allow it to exist. So that being said, private matches will be a fun addition. I know I'll mess around in them a bit. I might, join a tournament or two just to fuck around with, and things like that. So I am excited for custom matches. I mean, honestly, I am. It'll be something fun to do. If you're bored, you want to just run around on a fucking, blind watch or something and mess around or whatever. But, private matches are coming in Rise of Iron. From what I've seen, they are coming with Rise of Iron. They will be free. They're being added to Vanilla Destiny, so if you do not plan on buying Rise of Iron, but you want to do private matches, you can do that. Private matches are not tied to the DLC of Rise of Iron. So those will be a free update alongside Rise of Iron, but you do not need the DLC to play them. So that'll give something for vanilla players to do if they don't have the DLC. You know, you'll have custom matches now. It'll be a basic game, you know, feature, things like that. So that'll be fun for those people, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of other stuff to do in Rise of Iron that isn't private matches, so it really won't, I feel like, at least at first, won't take the main focus away from, you know, the part of Destiny that you know, Kat and I feel really matters to us, like the PvE. You know, there's gonna be you know, events and raids and new weapons and armor to go for and things like that. And while a lot of the endgame content currently and will continue to be PvP oriented, you know, Iron Banner, I mean, let's just make a list here, because a lot of people don't understand what we mean by PvP has more stuff. Because when you say that, you think, okay, so PvP has, you know, they have Crucible, you have a raid, patrols, strikes, Prison of Elders, all this other shit. What we're talking about is PvP has Iron Banner, a monthly, week-long event that has endgame gear. They have Trials of Osiris, which is a 4 times a month on the weekend, 4 days of the week. They have a, you know, an endgame level PvP, basically tournament competition deal, and that's, you know, every weekend for 4 days. They have Iron Banner, which is once a month for an entire week. Then they have, you know, the Crucible just entirely. You know, then the featured weekly playlists that have multiple game modes and then like that. But they have
the new bounties. And
then, you know, the new bounties and things like that. But they also have, you know, the True Meaning of War bounty situation, which, you know, grants a Nightfall reward, which before kind of was one of the reasons that a lot of people would come back to PvE, was to get, like, their big reward from that. And while I think that the True Meaning of War bounty and the Nightfall are synonymous, and I do believe that they are, you know, fair and equal and things like that, and I think that those by themselves are not to be, you know, argued about. Like, I think the True Meaning of War bounty is a good thing. I think that's fair, and I like that you don't have to play the Nightfall to get Nightfall rewards, because there is now, you know, a PvP version of the Nightfall reward system. I like that. The problem I have with it is the True Meaning of War bounty for Crucible players is going to be much, much more trivial than it will be to do the Nightfall. The Nightfall is just, regardless, it's easy. The Nightfall is an easy activity. You know, regardless of how you look at it or how you play it, it's a simple activity for the most part. Now, the problem I have with it is if you are a Crucible player, you now have the True Meaning of War bounty, which is, you know, just, you know, your regular week in the Crucible, and then you have the easy Nightfall rewards, whereas PvE players have, you know, the Nightfall rewards, and they have the annoying and really just horrible slog through the Crucible for that week trying to get the True Meaning of War bounty done, which kind of invalidates it being equal. You know, if you're a Crucible player, you have 2 Nightfall rewards. If you're not, you have 1, and then the horrible slog to get the True Meaning of War bounty done. So that's where I think that's unfair. But the Crucible still has more events. They still have more things going on, like Iron Banner and Trials of Osiris, as opposed to PvE. And I suppose you could argue that, you know, raid is this equal to that, and then, you know, strikes are equal to that. But I really feel like Bungie curates and, you know, does more things specifically for Crucible, and then allows those repercussions to just pummel PvE than they probably should. But that's just my 2 cents on that idea. But we're coming to the end of this prison here, so do you have any final thoughts on private matches, Crucible versus PvE, you know, weapon nerfing, anything really to do? I mean, they showed off the raid, they showed off a bunch of stuff, but I feel like private matches is going to take center stage right now because of how long people have wanted it.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I think, is it's going to bring private matches to... Yeah, it's going to be the main focus of everything, like, without a doubt in my mind. That's what's going to captivate everyone's eyes, and then... I guess since that's coming out first, I assume it's coming out first, then we'll get the raid a couple days later. I think everyone will kind of turn their eyes to the raid.
I think the raid is coming out 2 or 3 days after the launch, I think is what it is.
Yep.
So, yeah, I do think it's a good idea, and I think that private matches will kind of, it'll be a shiny, a shiny thing for the Crucible players to be like, ooh, shiny, and then they won't focus too much on PvE, which to me is a good thing, because I hate playing raids and strikes and stuff with PvP people, because they play totally differently, and they play like ass. They, you know, they're usually more like, and this is not everyone. Obviously, I don't speak about every single person that likes Crucible more than PvE is going to be, you know, someone who's just an awful person to play with. But a lot of the times, they regard anything that isn't Crucible as not worth their time. You know, it's like, oh, this is just, I have to do this for the rewards, ugh, and they won't really try. So those are the people that end up being the, you know, AFKers and stuff like that, or people that just, you know, I've actually been teabagged a few times when I die in strikes, and it's like, what the shit? You know, it's like that kind of stuff. But they usually tend to be the people that don't care, you know, that don't really want to help during the strike or the raid or the nightfall. And they tend to bring the group morale down and things like that. I mean, I've raided with people that are like, I never play this, you know, side of the game, and they don't try, you know, and they just don't care to like be like, you know, listen to instructions or you know, do anything. They just don't care. And I know that isn't at all everyone, but that being said, it does exist, and it exists to an amount where it's a stereotype.
It's noticeable.
It's noticeable, and it exists in a quantity that's a noticeable amount. So that's where I get worried. But I also kind of am happy about it because all those people are going to be playing private matches and watching tournaments, and they're not going to be raiding, and they're not going to be in strikes. They're not going to be in the campaign. They're not going to be playing the part of the game that we're going to be playing. So it doesn't. They'll be out of our hair while private matches are a thing, and I think that will continue forward because that'll give them an infinite playlist of things to do while we have, you know, our strike playlist and things like that. You know, they'll pretty much always keep themselves busy with their private matches, and we won't have to see as many of them unless, you know, there's some kind of crazy thing like, you know, Omnigal's dropping the best Crucible pulse rifle, and then everyone suddenly wants to play a strike. So unless those things happen, we won't really see them as much anymore, I feel, because of custom matches and tournaments and things like that. So I'm kind of thankful for that side of it, to look at a positive before we end this.
Yeah.
But
It'll be fun to have new content regardless for
where
everyone.
the fuck is the boss? Oh, he's over there.
He's over here.
Ooh, good. You tether him? Nice. Let's kill this fuck. He doesn't stomp, so you can get nice and close to him. Let's get this boss down. Boom, dead.
There we go.
And get a bunch of upgrades from that too. I started wearing all my Desolate armor and stuff. I have like, this is like the only armor I kind of like on my Warlock that isn't my exotic set. So it's like I'm leveling everything up at once because of it. But yeah. So that stuff's coming September 20th, I think, is when all of that activates things. So look out for Rise of Iron, $30 US, all that fun stuff. But private matches, raid gear, trials gear, Vanguard gear, Iron Lord gear, Iron Banner gear, you know, all that fun stuff will be out there. And I feel like Destiny's going to get a lot better. It's going to get a lot better real soon. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited about it. So yeah, I suppose we should show the loot at least. So I guess we'll come down here and show the loot. Make sure to get that ghost that's on the way down.
I think I already got it. I think you got it. You showed me it when we first did these when
I got it for you.
Viable again.
Lol.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's get our Sterling Treasure boxes for the week and then go open them and hopefully have good loot. Good loot. But yeah, I figured I'd throw on these you know, my Desolate gear, my Omnigal Bond, and my gauntlets, and I think it looks nice together. But that's gonna be it for us, I think. I think we've pretty much said everything we needed to. Things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What do you guys think about private matches and Iron Banner and Rise of Iron and Trials and all that shit? So let me know what you think in the comments below. If you agree, disagree, whatever. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, your rating would be much appreciated. And as always, until the next video, have a great day, everyone.